like to please call to order the Board of Education meeting for Saline Area Schools for December 13th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. If everyone could all please rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, just a short message of thanks and welcome this evening. First, we would like to thank David Hayward for his service this year as a Board of Education trustee. I know individual trustees might want to thank him in their comments also, but David, I really appreciate you putting yourself out there and stepping up to serve your community, so thank you very much. Also would like to welcome Dr. Lauren Gold. As we discussed at a previous meeting, Lauren filled a seat that our Secretary Candace Jones was filling, which was a partial term, so that one is seated first. And we would like to welcome back Tim Austin to our Board of Education, who will be joining us in January. His term begins on January 1st. Moving on to public comment. Betty, I can't see you, but... Okay, I just want to acknowledge for our first public comment opportunity that there are no public comments. Moving on to response to a previous public comment, we are always available at sasboard@salineschools.org or the Let's Talk feature, and we love to hear from you in person or on electronic means. Moving on to revisions or approval of the agenda. Items may be added or deleted from the meeting agenda, and or the order of items may be changed at the request of an individual board member or the superintendent. The agendas must be approved before proceeding further. I'd like to please entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved, Miller.
Jenny, thank you. Support. Michael, support. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we have 7-0. Motion carries. Scheduled reports. We have one this evening, teaching and learning update, continuous improvement. If we could have Kara Davis and team up to the podium, that would be great.
Good evening. I'm using Steve's strategy from the night before, or the night last, where I brought my computer up so I could actually see it, so that I'm not doing the back and forth pace. So it's great to have all of us here today to speak to you. We're really looking forward to sharing the district's continuous improvement plan. This is our December report. Before I dive in, I'd like to introduce my co-presenters. Caroline Stout is here. She is our district MTSS coordinator. Jen Nelson is here. She's a literacy coach as well as an instructional designer. I also have a number of our teaching and learning team members here because they are an integral part of our continuous improvement plan. Shannon Washington, Director of Culturally Responsive Instruction. Beth Russo, our secondary MTSS coordinator. Katie O'Keefe, our district EL coordinator. And Sherry Sunan, who has multiple titles. She's a building MTSS coordinator as well as an intensifying intervention instruction specialist. So our continuous improvement plan, we had previously presented on our goals in Q3. That's setting up for success in launching. So at that time, I had shared our goals with you. We talked about the path to getting to our goals and our plan. And we're now in the monitoring and adjusting part of our plan, which includes collecting data, monitoring that data, which involves analyzing and reflecting on the data that we have received through our local benchmark assessments, as well as our course grades. We're going to be sharing this data with you tonight, and this presentation also fulfills our state 98B report requirements. As review, our district continuous improvement goals are twofold. One is increasing overall rates of mastery in content areas as measured by local assessments. K8 and then course grades 9 through 12 among students, regardless of subgroup, by increasing staff competency in the use of evidence-based culturally responsive instruction, as well as a complementary goal of strengthening social emotional support models in order to positively impact staff and students' self-reporting of SAS services as measured by the biennial perceptions of equity survey. There are related building strategies listed there for you. I'm not going to read them all to you, but each building strategy is anchored in the two, or is meant to be striving for the 2 district goals, and are anchored in some of our focus documents, like our culturally responsive instruction definition, our mission, our strategic frame, our compass, social emotional well-being, and then our DEI 3-year plan. These goals, alongside of Dr. Lotch's focus areas for the year, are really helping to center our plan and guide our work. For tonight, we're really focusing on academics in this report, not as much of the SEL angle, and there's also a component of the culture of equity and some of the culture responsive work that we're doing. Once our goals were established, we had designed an intentional approach to actually impacting growth in those goal areas. And there's 3 main components. So intentional programming, targeted staffing, and then professional development. And you'll hear themes of this throughout the presentation this evening as it's connected and integrated with the data that I'm going to be sharing. Because as a part of our data monitoring plan, we are monitoring 3 areas. Growth, so in which ways are our plan positively impacting overall student success? Disproportionality, in which ways is our plan positively impacting students in subgroups? And then reliability, how well do our assessments holistically represent that student growth? And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline so that she can share some of that data with you and some of the information and context around our data points. I know, I didn't look at it all.
Thank you so much. I'm Caroline Stott. I'm the MTSS coordinator. My son Remy gave me this tie to wear tonight. I think he thought it was foundation my credibility, but perhaps it'll just make the graphs that I'm presenting a little less dry. So there's 2 main types of data that we're going to be presenting tonight. One is Acadians, the other is NWA. So I wanted to give those of you who might not be familiar a little overview of what that is. So Acadians is a set of measures that are looking at automaticity with basic early literacy and early numeracy skills. We use it as our state assessment for grades K-3. And we use it also as a universal screener to both identify students who might need support, which we then validate with other forms of assessment, and also to look at the impact of our instruction on the broader grade and district level. And then we use it as a progress monitoring tool for those students who are receiving Tier 2 or Tier 3 support, all the way up through 5th grade. So to interpret those graphs, it's important to know that Acadian scores are broken down into 4 risk categories. From above benchmark, where odds of achieving subsequent goals are very high, generally thought of as students not being at risk in that category, all the way down to well below benchmark, where odds of meeting grade level expectations are very low. So the graphs that we'll show are looking at the percent of students who are at or above benchmark, meaning that they have low risk of being able to meet end of grade goals without additional support. So NWA, on the other hand, is a computer-administered adaptive test, meaning that much like what is the grad school assessment I'm thinking of? Thank you, the GRE. This is why we need a team. That if you get a question right, then you'll get a harder question. If you get a question wrong, you'll get an easier question. It generally spits out what's called a RIT score, but for ease of comparison, what I did is I just made graphs that showed you the percent of students who are at least scoring in the 40th percentile, which is considered average. That's generally regarded as sort of not at risk. So I wanted to show another representation of this because most of the assessments that are done by teachers tend to measure the middle orange part here, so the skills and knowledge that we consistently teach in school. Acadians tends to also measure some foundational components that have historically not been in all of our widely used reading curriculum and math curriculum for a variety of reasons. In some cases, because students are expected to know some of these things before they come to us. In other cases, research is just starting to be clear how important they are, and also there have been some political and institutional and philosophical factors that have made that these are not the focus of instruction. So Acadians measures those pretty directly versus NWA, being computer administered, is going to have a hard time measuring those foundational skills like phonemic awareness, early phonics, accuracy, for math, subitizing, and strategic counting and things like that. But NW does a really good job of assessing skills and knowledge that are gained without us explicitly teaching. So what we see with NWA is we see a lot of students who are scoring far past their grade level. And what I want to highlight in the graphs that I'll show is that we see the continued pandemic impact, not only on what we're teaching in school, but also on all that out-of-school learning as well that's measured by NWA. Hopefully that makes some sense. So now come on, clicker. There. So there's a lot of graphs. I'm not going to spend an hour diving into them, but you have them for your reference. So I wanted to highlight a couple literacy trends and later a couple math trends. So a couple of things that we're really proud of with the Acadience data is that we have had an increase in the percent of students at benchmark from spring to spring and fall to fall. With the exception of kindergarten, this fall kindergarten group has the lowest percent at benchmark that we've had so far. But again, these are students who maybe had a different experience than their counterparts over the years because of the pandemic. That's at least our hypothesis. The instructional focus on K-3 foundational skills, the shifts that we've already made in reading has led to some improvements, but there's definitely continued need. So I have highlighted some scores there, and you'll see that in the graph. For NWEA, we are seeing for reading and math that our 4th through 8th grade students do continue to perform high above the national norm. Because you'll see that at least 80% of our students almost across the board scored above the 40th percentile. So again, if you picture what that would otherwise look like, it's quite different. And the other thing that I wanted to point out that is consistent in literacy and in math is the continued disproportionality in assessment outcomes for students with minoritized and marginalized identities. The graph looks a little differently, so I'm going to spend a little more time on that one. But here are the trends. So for those of you who are familiar with this, the different colors represent the different years, and then the 3 bands are the 3 times a year that we give this assessment to all for screening purposes. So beginning year, again, this is kindergarten. You see it's pretty consistent over time, except the last 2 years have dipped a little bit. And then you can see the trend over the years. First grade is here. So again, a little bump from the pandemic. From fall to fall, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and this is the disproportionality graph that I wanted to spend a little more time on. So the shaded first one represents all students, and here I did break down the 3 main risk categories. So at or above benchmark is green, below benchmark is yellow, and then the most high risk category, well below benchmark, is red. And so you can see for students who are economically disadvantaged, so we used free and reduced lunch qualification for that, for students with IEPs, for students who are English language learners, and for students who are from minoritized and marginalized backgrounds in terms of race and ethnicity, we do have worse outcomes than the general population. And that's something we are very much still concerned with and working on, and I'm proud that the teaching and learning team is taking a special focus on this year. So for NWEA, this is the multi-year trend. Again, I just try to make the graph similar, but we have less data because you can only go back so far with NWEA. So this is the percent of students who are at least average in reading over the last 3 years. We did not give it in the middle of the year in 2020, 2021. 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. For high school, or sorry, I forgot about this one. So for this slide, equivalent to Acadience, but broken down into the 5 risk categories that NWA uses. Same kind of color coding though. Blue is high, red is high, average. Yellow is average, low is where we start getting into risk. So low average is orange and red is low. And again, you can see the similar trend when you compare all students to all the different subcategories. For the high school, we don't have NWA or Acadience, so we use grades for 98B reporting. We know that this is an imperfect measure, and we are working on what we might be able to use in the future. But this shows you the percent of students who have at least a C in core ELA courses. Questions so far on the numbers? Go ahead. Which slide would you like?
Thank you. So looking at specifically the racial identities, I'm seeing something missing. So more than one race. And I'm wondering if you lump that in or what's going on there, because I know that definitely impacts the number of children,
Yeah.
and also would fit into that. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, so the way that we pull, so some of these graphs are really easy to pull. Some are not. This one is not. So the way that we have to do this is we actually have to do it manually, and there's not a way to pull that piece. And same with economic disadvantage. There's not a way to disaggregate like who's on reduced versus who's on free lunch. And so we are bound basically by how our system operates there, unfortunately. There are some students who are excluded, students who didn't report race, and I am honestly not sure how students with multiple racial identities are in here. This is how Power School is reporting it. So my guess is it would be either take the primary one that was listed, or those students are just not represented. But I'll follow up and I'll see if I can figure it out.
Yeah, because it's a large number. So yeah, if we could figure that out with the Power School and make sure that data is pulled, or why isn't it there at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you know, for years, okay, as an educator, I've heard about standardized tests having, underrepresenting groups and being culturally biased and all those things. Are we seeing any changes on that front, and what kinds of discussions are happening to try to alleviate those things? And then, and is it still an accurate depiction, I guess is what I'm wondering.
That's a really good question. Are you asking if we're talking about that in Saline, or are you asking if there's movement at the national or international
Well, I mean, I
level?
don't think we're going to be able to get the NWEA changed, right?
Right.
For us specifically. So it would have to be more like a national, or like a state starts it and the nation picks up on it. But what do we do from a professional development standpoint? What do we do from being intentional standpoint and those kinds of things? Do you have any thoughts?
I'm not sure if they can be summarized right now, but yeah, Jen will speak to some of it. Yes, so before taking this role, I was a school psychologist, and I was highly aware of the fact that our assessments are culturally biased, even IQ tests, especially IQ tests. With the two assessments that I just presented, NWEA, I'm not honestly familiar with what they are doing right now to address it. I know they are a very large company. They do have text that is supposed to be, representative of a lot of different cultural backgrounds and identities, but I don't know. I'm not in their kind of inner discussions with that. With Acadians, some of the items are very much more culture neutral than you might expect. Even though nothing is culture neutral, right? But, one of them, for instance, shows dominoes and asks students to tell how many. So there's no words, there's no, potential to talk about baseball versus cricket. So it really tends to measure more foundational things. Again, culture is in everything. So I can't say that they're unbiased, but that's definitely a good consideration when we're analyzing these.
Caroline has a lot of slides, sorry. So I get to talk about what we're doing to support teachers and students with literacy, and I'm going to organize those in 3 categories and highlight a few of them. But if you're around in buildings and have the opportunity to talk to teachers and ask them, they'll probably say a lot of these things that I'm going to highlight here. So we're working in supporting literacy of teachers and students in professional development opportunities, shifting some of our practices, and also expanding resources for all to make sure that we're being thoughtful about all of our learners. In the category of professional development, a couple of things that I'll highlight is some of our work that we're doing in our K-3 buildings on our building goal meetings. So as part of our professional development plan, teachers meet monthly for professional development. And in the young 5s through 3rd grade, we are working on literacy. And so in that time, so far this year, we've been focusing on things like using decodable text, some updated research around teaching reading, how to prompt readers when they encounter a word that they don't know, and moving into the winter in more phonemic awareness. Another opportunity in professional development is just making sure that we're also aligning this work with gen ed and special education teachers so that we're all using the same language, resources, strategies for all of our learners. In terms of shifting practices, a big shift that we're making this year is really becoming more data-driven, really sharing the data that's relevant for teachers. Some of that isn't always accessible to them, so getting that into their hands, but then also supporting them in how to read it, what are some protocols to talk about it, so that they can be having these conversations amongst teacher leaders, but also in their grade level meetings, and that it's something that's informing our discussions, our curriculum decisions, and the things that we do in our classroom as well. Another exciting practice, shift in practice this year has been that we've always had best fit or win in our K-3 buildings, and we've now expanded that to include all of 4th grade students are now participating in that, and we call it team time when it's at Heritage, and half of our 5th grade students have that access now. In thinking about how we've expanded some of our resources to support all learners, one big area is that we've added an MTSS coordinator at the secondary level and offering different resources for our English language learners. Some of those including an after-school program available at Harvest, an English for EL class that we now offer at the high school, and also some one-on-one tutoring for students that qualify.
May I ask, Jen, who is the MTSS coordinator at the high school? Ta-da! All right, thank you.
Well done.
In middle school and high school. Just got a big job. Okay, so some of the math trends that I wanted to pull out of the next couple slides so that, again, we can get you home before midnight. In terms of Acadians, we have increased the percent of students at benchmark from spring to spring and fall to fall again, which is really great. We are seeing our concepts and application scores be higher than our computation and foundational skills scores, which is consistent with the focus of everyday math, and that's something that we're digging into and Jen will speak to. One of the focuses of some of our curriculum and PD work are authenticity with some of these key early math skills, as well as ensuring that we have a really strong foundation of number sense and everything that means, using more manipulatives with some of our youngest students. In terms of NWA, trends are similar to reading, but it is worth noting that both Acadians and NWA are showing that reading scores are lower than math. So we've had a focus on literacy for a long time. We're really proud of the work that we've done. But us and just about every other district in the entire nation has some pretty interesting trends with regards to math, and that's really helping us make the case for focusing more on some of the math shifts. So I will let Jen discuss that in a minute. But real quick, some pictures. So Acadians math, again, we have not been giving this for many years. We don't have as much data. And this year we will be giving it in the middle of the year for the first time to everybody. So this is kindergarten, the composite percent at benchmark, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and then the trends by subgroup. This is NWA, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th, and 8th. And again, the graphs by subgroup and our course grades for 9th through 12th, through 11th grade.
Some ways that we're supporting math with students and teachers are also listed here in those same categories. So professional development specifically around for teachers and trying to look at our data, what our data is showing, and how instruction can potentially change, or things that could be added, or time that needs to be spent on different things has been a part of our fall. Another thing that's been really important in regards to math is that we've started curriculum reviews this year for the first time in a long time, focusing on math and science this year with the idea that we'll focus on other subjects over time. And so we have finished our first phase of curriculum reviews with 3rd through 12th grade teachers, and we'll be seeing our K-2 teachers on Thursday. That practice has really caused us to be really thoughtful about math in lots of different ways, where we're looking at data, we're looking at vertical alignment, we're looking at horizontal alignment, and that we know that this work is going to be really important with determining how we move forward with that. In terms of expanding resources to support our learners, we do have some options for students that qualify around tutoring, and our EL program available at Harvest is also spending time focusing on math. Now we're open for questions, more questions.
Could you go back to the slides on math for 4th and 8th grade, 4th grade first?
Sorry. It's here. I don't know why we can't see it.
Let's go to 4th grade first. So I guess my question on 4th and 8th specifically, I just want to make sure I was on the right slide. The dip 22, 23 beginning of year on this slide and that slide.
Yep.
Have you guys begun to dig into that? I'm just thinking about where they are when they exit or enter buildings, and if there's any correlation to grades at that phase.
Yes, I think there's kind of two parts to the question, right? Have we dug into these trends? And also, what's the connection between like the exiting 3rd grade and the entering 4th grade, and then the exiting 8th and entering 9th? Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So yes, we've begun to dig into it, but key word is began there. So I'm not going to claim to have the solution with math. Right now, we're starting to begin to pinpoint where the problem areas are. Sherry Sunan has done a lot of work unpacking this K-3. One of the things that we know for sure that relates probably more to the Acadians data, but to this one as well, is that we do, much like we have done in reading over the past couple of years, we do have a need to focus on some math foundational skills. And the curriculum review comes at a really good time for that. So one of the things that we've been hearing from, for instance, our 4th through, I'll just say 4th up grade level teachers over the years is that their students don't know their math facts fluently enough to then have the cognitive energy to focus on more complex problems, right? Now, when I say that, take it with a grain of salt. It's not that nobody can do it, but there's still a large portion of the population who probably should be using strategies that are just more efficient, right? So I think that's part of it. With the lower Acadians math data, we have dug into a little bit more, especially like this one, for instance. We still have some 1st grade students who are working on subitizing, and I'll let Sherry describe this a little bit more, actually. Do you want to come take them? You guys are all here. Might as well make it worth your time.
So what we've found is subitizing is a skill that they can actually look at a group of dots or look at a dice. And kids used to play board games. And kids don't play board games as much anymore, and it's a skill that they should have at the age of about 3.5, 4 to 4. And what we're finding is They come into kindergarten and less than 50% of our kids can subitize, and that subitize creates the visual memory piece for them, where a number is abstract. So we're working through really trying to train our teachers to think of, you need to have a concrete manipulative, whether it's dots for subitizing, base 10 blocks. Also take it to a representational where they could do it with just a picture and then get to the abstract number. And every concept needs to be taught kind of in that, if you kind of picture a Venn diagram with all three components. So in looking at subitizing, if they don't have that visual memory piece of that, that factors into multiplication then, right? You're looking at 5 groups of 5. Can they visually see what 5 groups of 5 are in their brain? So it starts at that early skill, and we're actually finding when they come in, less than 50% of our kindergartners can do that. So we're starting at those foundational skills before we're even getting to the number piece of it. So does that kind of understand?
It does, and that's great, and that gives me ideas for suggested summer programming, but, so how do we correct that if we go back to the 8th grade slide?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, I had another slide I wanted to highlight with that. There.
Oh, too far, one too far.
No, that was yellow.
Oh.
I went all the way. Sorry. It's like a strobe light.
There we go. Yeah, I know, it's flashing. So I guess my follow-up question would be, then what do we do about the 8th grade that we see here? Because clearly you've identified an excellent thing to work on in the future. But what about this? And I saw Musetta come in, hello. And so her new role, right, that transition period between 8th and 9th grade, I wonder if this is something that you've been talking with her about.
Haven't gotten there yet. I want to back up for 1 second. Going
Okay,
from
yeah.
3rd to 4th too. Don't forget you're looking at 2 different assessments. So one is a computerized untimed assessment. One is looking at automaticity, individually given assessment too, and then also a written form test. So they are given more partial credit in things on problems on the written for the 3rd grade. So I would say the transition is one, they're going from a one-on-one given or a whole group written assessment to a computerized assessment in NWA for 4th grade. So I want to point out that there is that difference as well. Going to 8th grade, I will let you guys speak to, because that is not my wheelhouse.
So Beth and I have been doing some work with this piece. So one of the things that we want to explore, that we are exploring, is using slightly different assessments with 8th grade, and also using the data that we have differently to place students more effectively in 9th grade courses. And not just for math, but math is kind of a perfect case example. So I was going to go back to the slide with the orange blocks, but I don't know, it might take me like 10 minutes to get there, so I don't know if it's worth it. But with this data, much like I described before, it doesn't really help us pinpoint, like, who is still struggling with the concept of what a fraction is, or who's still struggling with, doing division and multiplication effortlessly and smoothly, right? With using different strategies very efficiently and knowing which strategy to use for which problem. So we are going to be actually training a group of teachers, including some gen ed teachers at the high school and middle school, on the use of Ames Web, which is a curriculum-based measure much like Acadian's that goes all the way up to 12th grade. The idea is for us to be able to screen some of these 8th grade students in the spring to then not only place them more effectively in 9th grade, but better understand their needs and what needs are contributing to this data. So that's one piece. But I think the other thing I want to point out is just when you look at the NWA graphs across the board, not just in math, the trend is kind of declining when you look at fall over fall over fall, right? And that, I am going to go back to that slide. That's 10 minutes away, sorry. So that's kind of why I felt the need to add this piece here. I have been trying to use NWA for the majority of my career. And one thing that's been really hard is we have made some really significant curriculum changes since my beginning in Saline. And I have yet to ever be able to show that change in NWA outcomes. It's not the case for other assessments. With other assessments, we can say, oh, this was the year that we went from half to full day kindergarten. This was the year we changed our curriculum. This is the year we did major PD on this. And you see the change in outcomes. NWA, we really have never been able to see that impact as strongly as in other assessments. And I've talked to people around the county and around the state about this, and I've actually vetted this slide with a couple different curriculum folks. And I really think it's because of that kind of darker orange category. So I think NWEA really is continuing to measure a lot of things that we weren't teaching before that we're not teaching now, right? If you picture the 8th grader who's taking this, they'll get some 8th grade questions, but then when they start getting things right, they start going up and up and up, and then it starts kind of branching out. And so a lot of what NWEA is assessing, especially for our students who are significantly above average, are concepts that are far beyond the curriculum that we're using. Therefore, the impact that we're having on that is relatively smaller than on other assessments. So I do think that that's part of the equation. And I think that the bottom line is that, not to blame the pandemic for everything, because it's also given us some good opportunity, but we've had less learning outside of school in the pandemic as well. And that's kind of hard for us to quantify how much. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And in terms of thinking about the action steps that we've taken as a part of our plan, when Jen was describing the curriculum review to you, even today in math, we had 6th through 12th grade representation in that room, and then we had 3rd through 5th grade teachers in the afternoon. And we are presenting the same data to them, and in this particular case, as an example, pointing at that exact graph and then matching it to the exit data from last year and looking at it by subgroup and then talking in such excited voices around what's happening here, what questions can we ask about why this trend is occurring, and what do we do about it, what do we already know from our local assessment data alongside of our entry fall data and then our last year's exit data. And that when we think about our plan and those action steps, the curriculum review is integrating the data study at a deeper level than in a presentation we would give you this evening.
Before I go to Jenny, I just wanted to thank you for addressing my questions. It's so important to involve the rest of the subject matter experts in that conversation, both elementary and secondary, so thank you. Jen?
I was wondering, I have a few questions, but I'll start with this one. So I've always been told that NWEA can be a predictive measure of later assessments like MSTEP and PSAT and SAT. And so I don't see those measures in the data. So I wondered if you could speak a little bit to, I know you were talking about how the NWEA doesn't always measure everything that kids know. And so while I understand that, I'm also curious about the predictive nature and if you're seeing some connections or some trends with those other assessments that that would help us to kind of figure that out a little bit, figure out some of those holes.
I'll start and then I'll tag somebody else who may want to add. So you're right. Ideally, you know me, I would have like all the data all together and all the connections, right? But again, we don't have that kind of time. One, anecdotally, we see similar trends with MSTEP. There's a couple things that make those assessments harder to analyze for the purposes of figuring out where to go next. One is that we don't get them till it's kind of too late, which isn't ideal. Another is that, truthfully, they're not always reported in the same way. So like Beth and I spent a lot of time trying to compare SAT over the years, and we find like there's different ways that it's reported, which is really tricky too. And yes, there are correlations. One of the things that she and I are working on, and it's taken us a couple weeks, but we're close, is for the secondary level, especially the 6th graders and 9th graders. We're trying to do kind of a backwards engineering dive with the data to say, all right, well, who are all of our students who didn't do so well in trimester 1 of this year? What is all the predictive data that we could have had from last year and the years prior? And what is the most predictive of that? So it's taken us a while, again, because of organizing all of it, analyzing it, and then figuring out how we can code it. But we are using some of those pieces. There's one thing that I wanted to highlight, and I can't remember what it was. Is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, the main thing, like, it does come late. Like, we have looked at, like, for instance, the students who are not doing well in Algebra 1. We went back and grabbed NWEA and PSAT scores, and the PSAT scores, anecdotally, completely anecdotally, were more predictive of how they're doing in Algebra 1, but we don't get them in time to use that as a placement number. So we're trying to figure out what can and we use what we have available to us, because class course selection starts right after break, so we're kind of on that time.
And we also, again, looking at, as we have elevated data as a part of the ongoing conversation at the district level and help teachers have a really healthy stance around using data to drive decisions and given them the data to manipulate. Again, today, we just happened to have the math review today. One of our fabulous math teachers took the data, spun out an Excel spreadsheet to show the growth between 8th and 9th grade, same kids, because often we're comparing students, you know, 4th grade, 4th grade, 4th grade, 4th grade, but we're not looking at how the 4th to 5th to 6th, what that trend is. And I had shared that with you in September because we had all the data from 1 year, and I pulled lots of data to show the trend of a single student, or not a single student, but a group of students across time. And with the data that we were using today, for example, we were looking at how there was an improvement in our subgroup performance between 8th grade and 9th grade. So same students from one grade to the next. So from 2021 in 8th grade to 2022 in 9th grade. And then we talked today about the excitement of being able to look at them as 10th graders. And so that's the exciting work behind some of the plan action steps that we're putting forth in our plan.
Yeah, I did note that, like, for the fall data, when it showed, like, the decline, I went back and looked at this year's fall data compared to, like, so it didn't look, I mean, it's different cohorts of kids, right? So we're comparing, yeah, so that was helpful, and I'm glad you pointed that out to us in the fall, because that was helpful for me this time. I wonder, just sticking with math for just another moment, the state the early math task force. I'm so used to saying early literacy task force, but the early math task force is kind of in its infancy compared to the early literacy task force. So is there opportunity for us to tag on to some of the professional development that's happening at the state level that then can impact what's happening at the local level?
So we've started to use some of their documents that they've released. Like, they now have like literacy essentials, they have math essentials, but everything is in draft form still. And currently attending some of their professional development is only an opportunity for targeted school districts, with hope for increased participation potentially starting next year. So it's something that we're watching really closely and hoping that that'll be a partnership, because it's been so helpful within literacy.
Last question, sorry. The curriculum reviews, you mentioned those curriculum reviews, which I think are can be incredibly powerful. And you just mentioned, like, the one teacher, I'm sure, like, math people just are, like, their brains operate so differently than than my own. So when they can whip up those spreadsheets with the, with the cells that calculate automatically, I'm just always impressed. But I wondered if you could just share with us a little bit about the practical implications or the application, like what's coming out of those reviews, what shifts, can you name some specific shifts that have happened as a result of those reviews? Like, what are you seeing in classrooms? What are teachers saying that they're going to do, or what are they currently doing that is different? Maybe just an example or two.
Well, I would, as Jen mentioned, like, we are in the infancy stages of this. So we just started, and we're looking at a 2-year component. So this year, where we just finished, was looking at our data and the intersection of our data and our reflection on our current curriculum. So the question was, what does our data tell us about our curriculum as it stands right now, so that we can start to ask some questions in order to think forward. So I can give you, like, even some of the ahas leaving the room would be, I wonder if one of the reasons our students don't score as highly as they might on the science M-STEP is that it is heavily anchored in charts and graphs. And while we as scientists, we plot our data that we've collected as scientists on a graph, we don't spend a lot of time actually interpreting graphs and then drawing conclusions about those graphs and using the images on those graphs to come to a determination about the science concept. And that aha was, last week, and you could see the people in the room say, we're taking it back to our department, that we just need to talk more about graphs to get students more flexible with using graphs to make decisions and then answer questions, because that's not something that we integrate. Also talking a lot about, sometimes we make decisions in our curriculum reviews, and our scope and sequence isn't scoped to actually help our students reach mastery by the time the test happens. And again, we're talking about state level tests, and that's not what this data is, because we don't get that until May, and I'd already shared our standardized test data, but that's an example of a question or something that would come out of that. Like, what if we flip this? What would the implications be if we did this unit before that unit? Of course they don't know that, because we don't teach that until May after the test. More localized data like this is much more usable in the moment. And that's what we're really striving for, because our teachers have their student reports, their grade level reports that they can look at and make some different decisions around. And we've been using standardized test data at the curriculum review at this point in time.
Great, thank you. I was just going to mention, when Caroline mentioned that there are things happening on the test that sometimes kids have not been taught. There was a time when I was teaching second grade at Pleasant Ridge, and I was just walking behind students, monitoring and proctoring, and looked at the screen and saw one of my second grade kiddos with The Tale of Two Cities on their screen. And that student is now a very successful student at Wayne State University, doing an awesome job. But I just remember looking at that and thinking, well, we didn't teach that in the first semester of second grade, so it is what it is. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for helping to make some of those connections for me, and I'm going to be really excited to see what comes out of the curriculum reviews over the next couple of years. Thanks.
So I have one question, and it was sort of triggered even more by your statement just now. You talked about aha moments, right, amongst colleagues and I'm wondering how much of our professional development plan is rooted in peer-to-peer improvement and conversation. Because I know personally for me as an educator, those are the things where I learn the most.
I would say that we're always trying to be mindful of who's doing the talking is doing the learning, with students and with teachers as well. So we've got to find that balance of explicit instruction and then time to reflect, talk, think, ask questions. So we're really mindful of that when we're planning PD, whether it's on literacy related things, whether it's in our curriculum review cycle. We know that teachers are hungry for those opportunities, and that the best thinking ideas often come through those conversations. So I would say it's a really heavy balance of explicit instruction and teacher talk.
And I would add that pre-pandemic, we did a lot more with learning walks and lab sites and just components like that where teachers could learn alongside of each other. And then during the pandemic, we eliminated those opportunities and didn't access those. And now we're continuing to be mindful of our staffing circumstances in which we're not wanting to put a burden on the district. So when we think about a 2 year, so if this year's data, the first year of any content review is looking at the data, making decisions about curriculum, matching our materials, aligning our funding, then the following year might be that professional development. If our system can, withstand some of the ideas that we have of like all the great things that you could do to learn from each other in the classroom in real moments, lab sites, mentoring, modeling, learning walks, all of that, then we'll bring that back in and/or do something with flipped versions, bringing in experts in the field to coach up our teachers, taking advantage of the early math components that the state is forwarding. So as Jen said, we're continuing to monitor through that, and we're keeping it as something that we really like to integrate. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments? Oh yeah, David.
Sure, thanks. Couldn't let my last meeting and with all these graphs go without having some comments, right? So I've got one question and then two comments. So my question, and you may not be able to answer. You may not have the data to answer this, but it looks to me, just looking at these graphs, like potentially there's looking at the disparity graphs, like for both. Math and reading, you're just kind of eyeballing these, right? It looks like there are potentially smaller disparities for K through 3 than there are for 4 through 8. And again, that's just me looking at it, so I may be wrong, but particularly with respect to IEPs and English learners, and maybe also with respect to economic disadvantaged students, and with racial and ethnic minorities. I'm a little bit less clear on those. But, and there could be a ton of reasons for that, if it's true, obviously. Like, I can think of 6 or 7 just off the top of my head. But I was wondering if you could just comment on that. Am I right in thinking that, number one? And if so, is that something that you've thought about? Does that represent something that could be an opportunity for that is something that we're doing right in K through 3 that we can expand further, or is that something that's kind of outside? Those are outside forces that we can't really have an impact on as a district.
Hi. So two answers to that. The first is that there are 2 different tests. And so Caroline did explain the difference between how those 2 tests are taken. So that's probably actually a large factor. And I would also answer by saying that we are just at the beginning of the journey in terms of looking at all of these disparities. I believe that this is the first time that this has been put in front of every single teacher to look at. And so we're in the beginning of just accepting this as what it is. These are the facts. There are these disparities. And when we talked about kind of step 1 of dealing with this data is accepting this as fact, then looking at the fact that there's an infinite number of reasons and understanding that some of it is historical, some of it is current context, some of it is situational context, and some of it is individual context, and really breaking down those 4 areas and recognizing that on any given day, all 4 of those could be at play, or just one of them could be at play. The thing that I did point out to teachers is that I could go to any course grade, any test, any standardized test at any grade level and get these results, get these disparities. They are consistent K through 12, no matter what the assessment or the class is. And so we're in the very beginning, just accepting that this is where we're starting. And there is a journey to take here to learn about why and what to do next. Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Good.
I appreciate that, thank you.
The only other thing that I was going to add to that, although I should know better than to speak after Shan Washington, it's a mistake, is that there's no doubt too that one of the many factors that is probably at play is that Matthew effect, right? The idea of the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that's something that we haven't examined specifically with the disproportionality graphs, but that has definitely been foundational to our work and our focus on the early elementary level, that if we can get students the foundation that they need so that they can, get to be excited about reading, get to be excited to see math everywhere in their world, then they will continue to learn on their own more. And if they start off on a path where they're struggling, it's going to be harder to go. So I do think that that's one of the factors here, and that's why I've appreciated, the fact that Steve has, for as long as I've known him, put a big priority on early elementary and getting students started off and right in our district as much as we can.
Yeah, that's absolutely critical. So that brings me to one of my comments, which is kind of reverse the direction that I was going to say this, but to amplify the comment that Susan had brought up earlier, but and this is not an issue with you guys, but an issue with Power School apparently. But if we're not able to look at students identifying with multiple racial categories in Power School, that's an issue that we need to address with our vendor or something, because I believe that is actually I know that's our fastest growing category of students, and it's also a pretty big group, just numerically, especially in the K through 3 age range. So just not only for this type of data, but for data across the board. That's something that we need to address with our Power School vendor or something, because if we're not able to disaggregate that group, that's a major
We have
equity
a long list
issue.
of things to address with Power School, because the other thing that, isn't, I mean, the other big problematic one that may be the next thing you're gonna bring up, I'm not sure, but is that male, female here is really sex at birth, right? We don't have any way of reporting gender identity or looking at that in any systematic way.
I certainly appreciate that very much personally, but and that's something that has come up in my family too with that particular issue. So my last comment was, I love, just two last comments, I guess, is first, you've done an outstanding job with this report. I love to see the level of detail, and this is just an incredible thing to see. But it's easy for us sitting here looking at this to get lost in the minutia of 2% change this way or that way, and to lose sight of the big picture, which is that overall across the board we're just performing at a wonderful level compared to statewide averages and national averages on all of these things, and that's something that every educator and every student in the schools should be commended for. So I think that's something to kind of keep sight of in spite of 2% change this way or that way, and also looking at our rebound post-pandemic. That's something that's very encouraging to see. I know we talked about that in September and last year, that we expected to see that, and we have. So that's also great to see. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was just going to mention, there are many problematic things about Power School, but it also is, I don't know if it's the way that it's presented to families, but when families are filling out their demographic information, it's the way that they're reporting and identifying. So when we're considering multiple identifiers, it's the way families want to be identified and recognized. So it's not a perfect system, irregardless of the problematic nature of Power School or some of the things that, and when I say that, I'm not criticizing our use of it, because it is widely used. It's just, I don't know that there is a perfect way of collecting that data. And there are many things that we wish that we could know that we can't always get from that program. So,
And I would say we do really strive to triangulate data using multiple data points. So we have survey results that, while those are more anecdotal, we can match that up. So while we're sharing this benchmark data with you today, behind the scenes, we're looking at multiple points of data. We shared some of that in September, so that we're trying to get as close to a complete picture as possible within the confines of the system that we're currently working within. Yeah.
Oh, mine was just a quick comment, because I let the experts here take it. So thank you for bringing in the fact that this is like a national, what we're seeing here is we can see at a state and national level. So I guess with that said, because, I've seen presentations given, and there's not that peer comparison and I know we're Saline specific, but, seeing things like, oh, Saline's blah, 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 and it's like, well, no, this is, going on, and the fact that you are looking at that and keeping that in mind is super important, as far as best practices and, trying out your own things, and I appreciate that. And then, so not to ask for more on your poor slides, with 1,000 things that we have to rush through, but I think a little bit of that might be helpful, just, to either preface it or refer to, just in case community members are viewing, this presentation, just so they can have that piece as well.
Absolutely. And we had it at our beginning of the year since September, because that was the exit data from June, which I knew many people had not seen, and we'll include it in the June as well. We looked at We did a lot of graphing. We could have used some help and trying it in different ways, because one of the things that we have been really cognizant of is what is the data story telling in such a way that teachers and administrators and district officials can actually use it to drive decisions, because sometimes there's so much overwhelm that it muddies the waters, that people feel paralyzed, or that they're focused in the wrong areas. And we really want to use data to instill action to impact students positively. And so we tried a lot of different iterations, so I appreciate that. And we will bring that back for the big report. So we better think about what that looks like in June. It'll be June 13th in 2023.
Thank you.
I appreciate that a couple of times, or a few times, I should say, I heard data to drive decisions, and I really like that. So I would love to know when you guys are coming back to present more on this. And I think I would just have a request that while I really also appreciate Steve's focus and your focus over the years on early childhood interventions, our secondary students are hurting from the last few years. So it might be something we could look at where we look at secondary first next time and then look at early childhood, because we always seem to look at early childhood first, and those friends are incredibly important as well. But our secondary students need some help.
And
I
absolutely.
think.
And
Thank
absolutely,
you.
and it's always, thank you so much for saying that, and that's a wonderful suggestion. The evolution of this presentation, pre-MyKIP, was a part of the 98B legislation, which originally was K3 and then has grown over the pandemic to K8. And then we're opting to include the high school information because we're trying to draw on that secondary focus, so that we are showing that that focus is there. And we could definitely do a better job, because there's so much happening behind the scenes related to our secondary action steps and our plans. And sometimes because of the early literacy focus, especially the K3 piece, you're right, we don't highlight that as often as we could, but we'd be happy to incorporate that in a future presentation.
Thank you. I would really appreciate that, and maybe some teachers in that discipline that are a part of the curriculum review.
And I would say that probably in the near future, sometime in the spring, our secondary MTSS report out, because that's a new program that we have. I can't remember if we directly put that on the board agenda or not. But there'll be a report sometime from the teaching and learning team between now and the June 13th, which would be our final report for this academic year.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions for the team? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Moving on to our schedule, moving on to our action items. Our first action item, please, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Round 1 CARES discretionary funding in the amount of $32,981 as submitted by Director of Community Education, Brian Puffer.
So moved,
So-
Miller.
Support McVeigh.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Michael. Discussion?
Now it is. Sorry about that. I'll just give you a quick overview, because it's been a couple of years since we've been here. We're thankful to be back here for our CARES millage. We have part of it is our discretionary item, which we award out grants people can apply for. We're happy to say we had 11 grants that were submitted this fall. We approved 7 of them, either partially or fully. We will have a round 2. Most of the grants that were not approved are going to be, our board is going to want them to submit their grants again for round 2, because we have to hold back 25% of our money that we have each year. So hopefully the grants that did not get approved, they'll get resubmitted, and hopefully we can approve more grants in our second round. As you can see, we had 11 grants total for over $100,000. The board approved 7 of those grants for just about $33,000. Like I said, again, we meet 3 times a year. The board is made up of 5 different members. And so what we do is, to kind of give you a little bit more background, we had 11 applications submitted. So in our first meeting, the board reviews them, goes over them, asks any questions. Usually we have people there that represent the board. And then what they have to do is each board member has to rank all of the grants from the one they would grant first to the one they grant last, submit that. That's the average, and that's how we go over the grants 1 to 11. And that's how we come up with what we approve and what we don't. Susan?
Okay, thanks, Susan.
Yes, so I have a question about one of these in particular, because the CARES is specifically a millage, recreation millage, correct? And I know that you know, has some funds and partnerships with the school and the city. And so I did the very last one, the organization, it says the underground and tournament nights. I want to ask you what the underground is, what organization, what it's, I want to ask you that first before I say anything further. So.
Sure, it's a youth group. That's where the Methodist Church, and we don't have anything in the CARES bylaws that say we can't approve grants for that. I believe we did another one probably about 12, 13 years ago as well. That's what that one's for.
So, so yes, it's a youth ministry group, right, with the Christian component.
Yes, it's just a group that they do after these programs for students that usually don't have like dodgeball, basketball, stuff like that.
Okay. I just, because it is tax dollars, I just want to make sure that that's okay.
Like I said, it's not, there is CARES bylaws. There's nothing in there not saying it can't be adjusted, but we did check that.
Yeah, Michael.
You and I spoke very briefly before the meeting about the bus for the Liberty Club. Could you just share with the rest of the board what that's all about?
Sure, it's a van and what they're looking for. The Liberty Club has two vans. They actually received CARES money in 2010. If you don't know where Liberty Club is, it's our program for once the young adults turn 27. Obviously, it's not provided by the school anymore, so it's our Liberty Club program that we've had since 2008. We have 36 participants in that program. We can't take everybody on one trip because we only have two vans, so we're trying to get a third one. And that's what this is for. Obviously, $15,000 doesn't buy one van, so you need more money on that. They do have other money from fundraising and on grants they've received as well. And so that's what that van is going to be for. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a first by Jenny, second by Michael. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing,
Opposed.
okay, hearing one.
Just because I want that information before I vote yes on this regarding the underground.
Okay, thank you. Hearing one, motion passes 6-1. Moving on to item B, I'd like to please entertain a motion to approve the 2023-2024 new courses to Saline High School course catalog as submitted by Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Kara Davis, as itemized on our agenda items 1 through 10. So moved by? Michael,
Support.
thank you. You guys are just
Come
going to
on,
do it all
guys.
night.
Come on.
Give Lauren a chance. It's her first. Okay, motion made McVeigh, support Miller. Discussion? Kara? Anything you'd like to say? Or Marcetta?
So we want to make ourselves available for any questions you might have related to the courses. They are fairly straightforward. I should introduce Musetta Deneen as well, assistant principal at Saline High School. And really, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them. There is we made quite a few name changes. And then there on the board packet, there's a list of the classes. And if Ben, starting on slide 11, if you fast forward there, thanks. Yeah. So if there's any questions, we can toggle back and forth between them.
I had just one question, specifically about manufacturing, but it could apply to any of these, but just wondering, oh, sorry, it might be me. How is it determined if classes are a part of the high school or the consortium? to me, the manufacturing, like my son is in marketing, and that's technically a part of the consortium. So I didn't know like how those lines happen and whether it makes a difference. And in terms of enrollment, whether or not then students from other schools participate in the courses. I just wondered about that. It wasn't anything critical of anything. I think they're great courses. It made me wonder the difference between the two.
So sometimes we have all Saline classes, like Saline students embodying in one class, and those might be feeder classes into our consortium program. The consortium operates as an entity within our district in which students apply to take those CTE classes that are the consortium classes within those bands. And so when we add classes, sometimes we're adding them to our course catalog as individual classes that are all Saline students, and sometimes we're adding them to the consortium selection. In this case, these are only our Saline classes. Yes. So I'm like, that's not the right slide for manufacturing.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It says manufacturing 1. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank
Mike, do we also approve the consortium classes too? Does the board approve those like we approve these, or is it a separate process because it's a separate entity?
Yeah.
Those do go in front of all the superintendents that participate for SWWC, and Dr. Rowe conducts regular meetings with us as a superintendent group, and then we do talk about new courses and locations too, that over the years we've been trying to expand so that the courses are not all at Saline High School, because there's a strong tendency that if they're offered at Chelsea, you'll get more Dexter and Chelsea students participating. And we're also trying to expand out east as well, Lincoln and some of the other offerings, some of the other locations. So it's a process that runs through the superintendents within the consortium.
Great, thanks. It just made me wonder when I saw those particular classes. My kids are having a fabulous experience in their consortium and their high school classes. So thanks for the work that everyone's doing.
Absolutely.
I had a question about the new financial algebra class. I know about the upcoming state requirement regarding personal finance courses. Is this going to be one possibility for meeting that requirement? And what will the others be? Are there others that are already in?
There's one other class that has some curricular content that will meet that financial literacy requirement. So that already exists right now, and this was being added to it.
Okay.
And I would say this is an ongoing process at the state level, so we're continuously receiving updates from the state as to what could be applied to the financial literacy credit for the students at the high school level. And so we could see something else count in the next year, because it's still not applicable for it's the class of 2027, I believe, if I remember correctly. So we're trying to get ahead and ensure that we have this in place for those students.
I do have a quick one. David Raff, before he left, had promised that he would share any courses that were sunsetted or shelved, not just renamed. If we could at some point get a list of those. I mean, some of these have been great and really interesting, but we don't know if they made or caught fire or carried on.
I will absolutely check with Mrs. Steger regarding that. It was something that we had talked about, and I was thinking that she had sent them to you ahead of time so that you could see them coming off the list. So I'll just check back to make sure that you have a list of those classes that were removed from the course catalog. A lot of them, it was obsolescence. I'll take a look and make sure you get that information.
I'm just curious to see if any of them didn't catch on is the other thing. And I noticed this morning that New Jersey is offering courses requiring students to have a course in media literacy from grade 10 onward, or sometime to finish. Yeah, so I'm just waiting to see that in a few years' time here. So, or you can get ahead of the game or get ahead of the curve and start now.
Spearhead it from Saline area schools.
There you go.
Yes.
I just wanted to say +1 to Michael. I'd love to see that list as well. So if we could send that to the whole board. I actually asked Steve about one of the courses that was sunsetted last week. So
okay,
that would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Comments or questions? No? All right.
Great.
Thank you very much,
Thank
ladies. Motion made McVeigh, second Miller. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Item C, I'd like to please entertain a motion to approve the 2022 board stipends as submitted by Superintendent Lodge.
Motion, Gerby.
Brad?
Support.
Thank you, Susan. Steve?
Yeah, I'll touch on this quickly. So this is the $30 per meeting, and in looking at the trustees and submitting their time for this, it's an average of around 25 meetings a year, at least for this past year, and this includes regular meetings, special meetings, organizational meetings. It doesn't include, committee meetings, that type of thing. So that's how this is paid out.
Okay, any questions or comments for Steve? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. I'd like to please entertain a motion to approve $1,506,850 to King Scott and $9,171,362 to Clark Construction for services associated with the $97 million worth of construction work from the 2022 bond. And we're going to insert those into the minutes and update them when they're filed with Betty. Thank you.
Happy to make this motion, Gerby.
Brad, thank you. Second?
Support, Miller.
Jenny, thank you. Steve, discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to actually walk through the process on how we went through the bids and ultimately are recommending these awards. And so what happened last week was we went through on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday both architectural engineering and construction management services. And we also had Jennifer and Brad involved serving as finance committee trustees. And then we also invited community member Tim Austin in the sense that he's has some experience here with this and as a community member and an incoming board-elect. And we also involved our capital projects team. And so we went through and listened to bids that construction managers and architectural engineers had submitted based on Series 1 of the bond process. Ultimately, we're recommending Clark Construction to provide CM services for educational projects in all three of the series. And then King Scott Architects to provide architectural engineering services for educational projects for Series 1. And so you ask, well, how did that play out? Well, initially, we only asked for bids for Series 1 of this work. But after Clark Construction came back and showed us all three series that they took upon themselves to bid out, we then consulted and determined that this allowed us the best pricing model and a more efficient way to move through the process. And so ultimately, after Miranda and Rax in particular reviewed all the pricing structure, felt that awarding Clark all three series at this time was the best financial move for the district, and with the knowledge of the quality of services that Clark has provided in the past, we felt really confident in doing so. At the same time with King Scott, they had bid Series 1, and we feel really confident with their pricing as well, yet we have not gone back and finalized what Series 2 and 3 pricing looks like yet for King Scott. And that Miranda and Rex will work on that in the near future moving forward. So for tonight, the recommendation is the 3 series for Clark, which is why the dollar amount is significantly more, and with King Scott, Series 1. Any discussion about that?
Yeah.
I'll also
Oh,
speak
go ahead, Brad.
to the, being a part of that team and how much I appreciated the multifaceted strengths of the team. So it was, when I think about, okay, Miranda was able to like see things through a financial lens, right? And then Rex really focused in on like the specifics of transportations with regards to buildings and grounds. And then Kurt, had difficult questions and past knowledge, and he thought about ability to attract, talent through this bond and those kinds of things. Anna asked questions about communication and how are those, how is the designer or architect and the construction manager gonna work with us to make sure we're informing the public? And then Steve is just, he has the pulse of our students, our staff, the negotiation piece, the overall integration of it and putting the team together. Anyway, so I have incredible confidence that we interviewed and had good candidates, and I really do think we're gonna get a quality product and we're gonna get it at a good price. And at the end of the day, that gives me as the treasurer and finance chair a lot of security regarding this bond and this particular portion of the series, so.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at Steve. So, I don't know. I'm looking at policy. And with the new school construction renovation, so policy 6321, and in the policy, it had said, or it says, that at a public meeting, the board or designees is supposed to open and read aloud each bid that the board received. And then the board may reject any or all bills, blah, 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 blah. So I don't know if that meeting that you're referring to is part of that process or, yeah. So, and if this was a decision-making, and board members are part of this decision, that should have been a public meeting as well, so.
Whenever you're going out to bid in this particular case for construction managers and architecture engineering, you actually don't need to do this process. The district can just award that, and you don't have to go through it. We felt that it was necessary to involve some board trustees in this case so that they could observe the process and listen in, but ultimately that was out of a courtesy and not because we needed to do that because of some policy specific information. Rex, do you want to comment on that too?
Right, on the professional side, on the professional services, we didn't have to do that. But on a request for proposal, when we go to build the structures, we will have a 1 o'clock meeting here. It'll be open to the public. Everybody's invited to come out and listen to the bids as they're read aloud. And we do that with every request for proposal when we're purchasing or buying material or contracting goods. So we do that for that, but professional services, we do not. We did have a bid opening at 1 o'clock where the capital projects team opened the bids, and we reviewed them at that time. And that as a designee would have been Steve Lotch at that time, or myself as that designee, to read the bids out loud.
So is that, so you're not talking about this time about reading the bids, you're talking about that you do that in other instances?
Correct.
Okay. And is that posted as a public, well, I guess, I don't know. If you're following this, I guess it would have to be posted as a public.
It's posted on our financial page under bids and proposals.
Okay.
And we also put it in the newspaper as well as the Sigma
Okay.
per the law. But professional services do not have to be bid. We wanted to do that to make sure that we were getting the best price for our taxpayers in our district from Clark and King Scott, who are our trusted partners, but yet we felt we were obligated to do that.
Okay, yeah.
Susan, I can speak to the board piece because you had asked about decision-making or anything like that.
I think, okay, go on.
Oh, I didn't know if Steve fully answered your question. We were there as observers and could ask clarifying questions.
Yeah, I concur with that, right? And one of the things that I will also say about this is, one of the things that I was glad that we were a part of was we were a part of hearing about how we didn't just take anything for granted here, right? Yeah, we had partnerships with King Scott and with Clark, but we brought in other groups and we awarded, or we interviewed them and we gave them a fair look. And, we also broke off the piece about the transportation center and awarded that separately based upon the specific needs of that team. And that was part of like the conversation and part of the interview process that I was glad I was able to see and hear, but did not have a vote on, right? But at the same time, like, again, like, does that give me assurance, like, in the current role that I have for this team? It does. But we didn't have a vote on it or anything like that. We were just there.
All right, any other questions for Rex or Steve? All right. So we have the motion made, Brad, second by Jenny. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Moving on to item E, I'd like to please entertain a motion to approve $1,708,000, $708,800 to A.R. Brower for the 2022 Bond Operations Center. Motion made.
Again, motion, Kirby.
Brad, thank you. Second? Oh, there you go, Lauren.
So, sorry, I don't know if we need to go back to the motion. I know we voted on the last one.
Yes.
We're just leaving that blank.
No, she said she's putting it
Oh, put it in.
Yeah, I asked for Betty to.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
I saw the numbers, okay.
Yep, absolutely. So motion made, Gerby, second Gold. Welcome, Lauren. Steve, any discussion?
Yeah, so as Trustee Gerby mentioned, we were, that's fine, the Transportation Center was looked at as a separate entity, and largely because, and this was Rex's doing in a smart move, in that this is a unique project in that it really wasn't educational as much as it was commercial site building. So we wanted to look at both companies and firms that do educational supports, but also specifically companies that look at commercial site building and have more of an expertise in this specific area. And ultimately, that's why we went through it as a separate process, and ultimately are awarding A.R. Brower the work. They specialize more in commercial site building. They're a local company, and confidence that it is also good to give local builders and construction team and architects some of the work as well. So feeling good about the direction of A.R. Brower doing this work. Rex, do you want to talk about a little bit more? You know, it's a lot about this process.
Yeah, so excited to work with a commercial builder like the A.R. Brower, along with Hobbs & Black out of Ann Arbor, with the architectural firm to do the work, and then IPEG, which is the process results company located here in Saline. So working with local people, local tradesmen. They normally do work with a lot of local tradesmen, but even more in Washtenaw County, and someone that works in Washtenaw County. So when we're dealing with site, we're dealing with erosion, environmental. We want somebody in Washtenaw County that knows this area, and I think that'll improve our chances to move faster and get things done quicker, and yet still efficient, and maybe make our schedule so that the middle school can move on and we can get the projects keep rolling, because the hinge pin is getting the Operations Center off the campus and moving forward. And I just want to thank all the companies that provided bids. I think we received 7 bids total. And so we had a good coverage, and it gave us a lot of flexibility to see which way was the best way to go, so it's good.
I really liked the idea of peeling this piece off from the rest, and as a middle school parent, I will highly look forward to it moving off-site and alleviating some traffic on Maple Road. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Administration updates.
Yes, I do have a few comments tonight. Wanted to thank all the participants who attended the DEI Advisory Council Open House on November 29th, and thank you, Shannon Washington, for organizing this and her leadership. We had some really excellent dialogue and heard from many diverse points of view as we were continuing to try to build common ground around doing this important work. And I think that was a good evening where we were working together in this area. Also, for anybody who was able to come to the SWWC, the Southwest Washtenaw Consortium Business Showcase on December 1st, this was a great event. Dr. Rowe did a terrific job organizing it. It included over 40 businesses from the Saline area, and the idea was to showcase the SWWC programs with our current students to get future students interested in it, but also to be able to network so that our students can look at the opportunities they have with local businesses in the career and tech field, which there are so many opportunities that we want students to stay in Washtenaw County, work here when they leave Saline High School, or actually any of the other consortium high schools. So it was just a great event, along with the culinary department serving 1,728 pounds of gourmet mac and cheese, as Dr. Rowe said many times, which was pretty funny. And then we're going to hear Dr. Rowe talking more about the direction of the SWWC and CTE programming at our upcoming January 10th Board of Education meeting. I also want to congratulate the Heritage and Middle School robotics teams. They're doing really well at the regional and state competitions, so well that Coach Chris Myers had mentioned to me this morning at the Foundation for Saline Area Schools meeting that one of the teams currently holds a top 10 score in the world for robotics competitions. And so they will continue moving on, and hopefully they're trying to get to national level, which is in Houston, Texas this year. And it also makes me realize how important it is that we move forward with our STEAM centers with this latest bond passing, because that's what these kids need. They need better facilities to be able to excel in these areas, whether it's FIRST Robotics or Science Olympiad or any of our science, math, engineering programs. We look forward to the importance of those state-of-the-art facilities for them. With that said, I just hope everybody has a great winter break. I'm really proud of the efforts of our student, staff, and community, and together we're doing great things in SAS.
Thanks, Steve. Allison couldn't be here with us tonight, but she did send me a note and ask that I read this to update you on the student front. National Honor Society had a very successful canned food drive with social services on Saturday, with a collective 8,000 pounds of food donated. Thank you very much to anyone who donated or volunteered. National Honor Society also had a Veterans Day event on November 11th, where veteran Saline residents came and talked to students about their life experiences. Saline Middle School had its annual Knots for Mots event on December 1st, and I really liked the video that the Saline area schools posted about that on Facebook. I saw that. They had a great turnout, with many students coming to help to make blankets for the children at Mott's Children's Hospital. And as mentioned, the SWWC had an amazing open house on December 9th with over 1,000 attendees. That's coming from Allison. Any trustee updates? Dr. Gold, would you like to go?
I'd just like to thank the board for the warm welcome tonight, and the many members of the community that have reached out. I'd also like to thank Dr. Losh and the administrative staff for getting me oriented, and all of our educators, as always, for being available when I reach out with questions. And I look forward to serving the kids of this community.
Great, thank you and welcome. Any other trustees? Yeah. All right, Michael and Susan.
See, we all forget. I do want to say it was my honor to be reelected to this board, and I want to thank everyone who supported me. And I'm really looking forward to the next 4 years of working on all the very many and varied issues we have. On November 15th, along with trustee Estep, I attended a MASB session titled Member Matters. We covered a broad range of things. And just to note that this is a free service provided by the Michigan Association of School Boards. This is leading to somewhere. I keep looking at you because two important words are coming up. Speaking of the MASB, with the addition of Dr. Lauren Gold and to our board table, we are very close to achieving MASB's Honor Board Award. And that is given to any board that has 100% of its members fully certified. Tim Austin has already got that level, so we're good. Check that box. And as soon as Dr. Gold completes, Trustee Gold, sorry, completes all 9 of the modules, we'll finally have reached that historic milestone. So my magic words to you are, no pressure. On November 19th, along with Dr. Lodge, Susan Estep, Brad Gerby, and Jennifer Miller, we attended the Science Olympiad Awards ceremony, which was a lot of fun. Gave out awards to students from all across Southern Michigan and Ohio, all the winners. And Saline showed up at the podium quite a few times. There are 23 separate categories, and which is pretty cool. And I was so impressed by what they were doing when I popped in a few times to the Science Olympiad during the day. Finally, November 21st, the Washtenaw Association of School Boards hosted the quarterly legislative coffee. Quite a few legislators showed up. And we now, Washtenaw County now, we have 7 different state legislators touch our county in one overlap or another. So we can reach quite a few legislators. And we discussed the historic Democratic flip, the Senate, House, and the House and Senate. We didn't go into any details, but we also talked a little bit about the lame duck session that has now since passed. So we're looking forward to another one in February or March, I believe. We'll let you know well in advance. And that will be in person. We haven't done them in person for a couple of real coffee, real faces, real people. Yeah. No screens. And that's it for me. Thank you very much again.
Your mic's on. Before Susan goes, I was totally remiss in congratulating Michael on his reelection. I'm so used to sitting here with you that it didn't even faze me. I welcome Tim back and I welcome Lauren, but I apologize for missing that. It's been 4 years of sitting next to you, so I just
down to business.
Down to business. So congratulations, Michael. Susan?
So, welcome, Lauren. Excited about you joining us here on the board, especially, you've interviewed here when we had lots of great candidates, and so I'm excited that you were elected. And then, David, you are leaving us, right? I'm so sad. So this is your last meeting, and I just want to tell you that I appreciate all the work that you've done in a short amount of time, and having your voice here at the table is super valuable, and I appreciate you, and hope that you, I'm sure you will, but continue engaging at the district level, and so thank you. And then Michael as well, welcome back, continued. Okay, yeah. And then you hit on a lot of things that I totally forgot about because it's been such a long time since our last meeting, so thank you. I do want to, I guess it's kind of a request from a board. You all trying to cut me off over here, is it? A request for information at a future meeting, because I know it's not something that is currently on our, our reports that need to be done. But I wanted to address bullying and harassment that some folks may hear about, or their own children or friends have experienced. And one of the things with Michigan is that bullying incidents need to be reported to the state, so the Department of Education, so specifically bullying. And I took a peek. I'm not going to give any specific numbers, but this year and last year, there was under 10. I'll put it at that. That was came up in the Michigan data. So I do have questions about that reporting process, and just if we can receive more comprehensive information on the district, each school, how is it being reported at the school level, how are we getting that information to the state, and of course the anti-harassment based on protected classes and identities is also another layer there that would get reported federally, but under the state law, in addition to reporting to the Department of Education every year, there needs to be a compiled report of all of the incidents. So the compiled report would come to the board on an annual basis. So I think, looking into those details, I think is important. So I'm requesting that as we're transitioning with officers and everything. So I just want to make sure that, to also, I want to know what bullying prevention, upstandard, bystander programs, bullying specifically on, classes that have been identified, and just to see what we're doing proactively as well. I think that's information that would be helpful to a lot of people. So, yeah. And yeah, so happy holidays to everyone, because it's about that time. So.
There, okay, so the microphone. Oh, okay. Is that okay? Okay. So first I wanted to welcome Dr. Gold. My first encounter with Dr. Gold is when I had infants on their first day home from the hospital at a pediatrician's office. And so Dr. Gold was immediately someone that I trusted my fragile babies to. And then about, I don't know, I think 7 years later, I had her son in my class and got to repay her care and gesture of kindness to me in that time. So I am thrilled to have you at the board, not only advocating for the children that you serve daily in your practice, but now for all of the children in our community. So thank you for stepping up and for committing to this work at the table. I also want to just extend a huge gesture of gratitude to David for his service over the last year. And in particular, I was thinking about the perspective that he brings to the board. And one moment that stood out to me was when we were working on the bond proposal, and there had been a specific kind of survey, the EPIC survey. And it was unique and it was different. And it challenged us to kind of think about how a survey like that could really be representative of our work moving forward. And just having your expertise in how those surveys work and how you explained that to all of us gave me such a measure of comfort and understanding that allowed me to have complete faith in the information that we were receiving. So I just will, I want to just thank you for how you can explain those things to us in such a manner that allows us to all have a better level of understanding. So thank you very, very much for serving, for stepping up, and for being a voice to many in our community. We'll miss you. We hope that you'll still be around. I trust that you will. In addition to Dr. Hayward and Dr. Gold, I also want to say hello to Hank, and so glad that he is here tonight. And I just really love Hank, the dog, the Yankee dog. He is crashed in the back of the room, but the joy he brings to all of us. So, and he didn't attack my bracelets tonight, so yet. But we love to see Hank, and I know the kids do too. One of my kids is missing Hank because she doesn't have replacement here this trimester, so she'll be jealous when I go home and tell her that I got to see him. So I appreciate the puppy snuggles tonight. I want two more things. First, I have had the opportunity over the last few weeks to really reflect on the work that Saline is doing in terms of the addition of Shannon Washington and the DEI AC, the teaching and learning folks. I don't know if that's really a committee or how you would, but the group of teaching and learning professionals that come together with our teachers. And it just, as I've been reflecting on that and talking to others in education from around the state, just having those experts and having those resources just alleviates such a burden on our classroom teachers when they have support and when they have someone who can guide and bring resources and just partner with them on brainstorming new ideas. It is a gift to our teachers, and then that extends to the work that they're doing with students. So I just have been continually reminded of how proactive and how much of a benefit that is to us. So I just want to say thank you to the folks who are a part of all of that, and thank you to Dr. Lotch for your leadership in helping to spearhead those organizing pieces. Lastly, to the students and to the teachers and administrators who are about to have a well-deserved winter break, I just want to say congratulations on getting to the winter break. I hope that the winter break affords you an opportunity to turn off your computers and to spend some time with loved ones and to relax and to be rejuvenated. And we just appreciate the work that you do every day for our students. Personally, in my own household, I know that the work that you're doing with my own children has been monumental and has been extremely personal. And I just appreciate the extra effort that our teachers go through. It's every year someone is connecting with our kids that doesn't have to connect with them in a way that just supports them and making their experience that much better. One particular incident just recently with one of my kids who was struggling, and someone who was not connected to them but reached out and met with them and came home with a completely different perspective and feels much more successful and has tools to help move forward. And that didn't happen on accident, but it also didn't have to happen. It was someone who went the extra mile. So thank you to our teachers and all of the staff who supports our kids. And I wish you a wonderful break.
All right. I want to start off by saying, David, thank you. I appreciate, too, the EPIC MRA survey and the information you provided about student count. And so, like, that does give me tremendous confidence in those types of things. So I know that you'll still be around, and I hope that you'll still be, you're going to answer our questions. I know you will. So we're going to want to do that. I'm excited to have you join us, Dr. Gold, and I'm excited to learn from you. Speaking of learning, Michael, you always encourage me to keep improving and to keep going, and so I'm excited that I get to continue to work with you. I want to just real quickly say that I also appreciate the invitation on November 19th to give out Science Olympiad Awards. That was so much fun. I just enjoyed being a part of the team, being a part of seeing the smiles on faces and all the different groups and all the, how cool, all those different categories. And there was just a diversity of talent in that room that was pretty astounding. So I was really happy and proud to be a part of that. to add to Michael's piece about election, and I heard a little statistic that is interesting, and that is that we are going to have a majority female legislature in Michigan. So I hope that I'm hearing the right things, and that'll be really, really cool. I want to lastly say how honored I am to serve as treasurer/finance chair. You know, it's a pretty easy job when Miranda Owsley is captaining the ship. So you make us look good, and I appreciate that. But you know, we're mindful of our structures, we're mindful of the things, and we're in solid financial shape. We're always going to be mindful about student count, and we're always going to be mindful about, you know, student allocation, you know, our student allowance. But at the same time, like right now, I feel pretty confident about where we are, and so I appreciate that. So I specifically want to thank you, Assistant Superintendent Owsley, thank you, and for answering my questions and putting up with me as I learned a lot on the job. And Dr. Lotch, thank you for your work with us there. And of course, President Stebbin, and I don't want to miss Secretary Jones as well. So I'm honored to lead that team this year, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to wish our staff an awesome winter break. You deserve it, and I hope you do. Unplug and get some break, get some time away, and all of that. And I think check. So thank you.
David, do you want to say anything? I get to put you on the spot on the last day.
I'll keep this relatively brief, but it has been a real privilege to serve on this board with each of you, and very briefly in the case of Dr. Gold, but and welcome, by the way. But yeah, it's been a privilege and an honor to serve with all of you, and it's been an educational experience for me, and I've learned something from each of you. It's been I can only thank you for the opportunity to serve the community in this way, and rest assured that I am not going anywhere, and I will continue to be just as engaged with the district as I have been in the past. You can't get rid of me that easily. Remember, I do have a second grader, so I will continue to be here. And if there's anything I can do to be of service in whatever capacity, you've got my number. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Moving on to our consent agenda, the following are offered as part of the consent agenda. The motion noted will allow for the authorization of all listed items without discussion unless a member of the board requests that any one or all be considered individually. These items will not be read aloud, but will continue to be listed out individually in the minutes for this meeting as read A through E. I'd like to please entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
So moved, McVeigh.
Michael, thank you.
Support Kirby.
Brad, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Item scheduled on our next agenda, Dr. Lodge.
Yeah, our main scheduled report is going to be SWWC update with Dr. Rowe.
Yep, and I would just add, we'll have our organizational meeting, and what that is election of officers for the new year, and actually, we will have our ceremonial oaths as well for Michael, Tim, and Lauren. Oh, and I see, Aw. Oh, okay. I have never had the public comment delivered by a dog before. That's pretty fun. Thank you, Betty. This is our second opportunity for public comment. A member of the public may address the board briefly for up to 3 minutes or request to be scheduled on the agenda of a future meeting. I am going to waive reading our disclaimer on the first page of our agenda. And so we know how that rolls. And I think Jenny has the cards, and we'll do the usual yellow card when you have 30 seconds left. Red card when you need to complete your thought when the 3 minutes are up. And we'd like to first welcome Megan Gunnarsson, parent, to the podium. And Megan, you know about the, there you go.
I'll save Jenny. Thanks for the opportunity. First of all, can Hank come all the time? I mean, he reminds me of Snuffleupagus. You can tell my kids are old. So my comments are a little bit sporadic, so please excuse the frenetic nature of them. I have, first of all, Ms. Estep, I want to thank you for bringing up that reporting to the state. We, as a family, personally have experience with bullying and opening a HIB and having it not be reported to the state under pre-plague. So there have been a lot of changes in administration since then, but it is an ongoing issue, and it will be nice to see actual numbers that are transparently reported. The presentation today that was about all of the subgroups, I noticed that there were a number of categories, as there should be, and I'm wondering how exactly these are triaged. I mean, most of you know I'm a nurse, and Dr. Gold can attest to her residency. We triage a lot. There are a lot of things that would like to be addressed, lovely to be addressed, but you have to prioritize. And personally, I think that the biggest issue in this district is diversity in socioeconomics. The average price of a home in Saline as of this month closing was $487,000. There are a number of your students who do not live in $487,000 homes, including my own. It is the primary basis of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is air, food, water, shelter, sleep, and clothing. And all of those subsets are very important. I fit into a number of those subsets. But most importantly, I think that we forget that this district is very economically diverse, and we tend to glaze over that because the houses are so pretty and the high school parking lot cars are amazing. I would just like to know how some of those things get prioritized, and maybe we could look at that first and then look at personal safety issues, which is the next tier up. I love to get into sense of connection and community and all of those things, but that's in the middle of the pyramid. It's not at the bottom. Kids show up to school unfed, unclothed, unwashed, no boots, no hats. It's a problem, and I don't think that we recognize it at all. The second topic I'd like to bring up is something that kind of popped up yesterday on my middle schooler's computer. The computer that I own, it's a bring your own device in this district for my children, now has extensions. And I understand why teachers would like to know keystrokes and where the kids are going. However, that's my device. If you want to know where all the kids are going, you need to provide the device. My seventh grader, should not be burdened with having to do the workaround. I do have a meeting with the IT guy, and we're going to figure it out. But it's totally inappropriate with a board who has come under fire consistently and repeatedly for transparency and notification to parents. Huge fail. I don't know whose fail it was, but a huge fail. People are upset, they want it taken care of, and they want it taken care of immediately. I own those devices, you do not. If you want to control it, you provide them. And figure out a way to get it off pretty darn quick.
All right, thank you for your feedback, Megan. Next, we have Luis Barnett. Would like to approach and start whenever you're ready.
Welcome, new board members, and Tim as well not being here. The election results showed us that people got out and voted, and what was interesting is that it was, in my eyes, pretty close. So this whole notion of a silent majority on one side or the others is kind of not valid. So I would say it's best to just focus on the needs of everyone, every individual, listen to every person, and I want everybody that got elected to be successful, because ultimately that means that all the kids will do well. So I wish you all well. Okay. I second what Megan Gunner said about that extension, but I'll deal with that as well. Now, the DICOP DIAC was great because one thing that came out of that is there was a higher level of transparency, and it enabled everybody in the community to be heard, and it just built some trust. And I think if we strive towards that, I mean, here I'm looking at Bridge of Civility, so if we really push that, we'll make this district stronger. And there's some issues that I have with DIAC, but I'll be dealing with those as well, hopefully, and have a good outcome. And that's pretty much it. So wish you all well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next meeting will be here in the Liberty Boardroom on January 10th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to now please entertain a motion to adjourn the Board of Education meeting of December 13th, 2022 at 8:29 p.m. What's, okay, oh, there you go. All right, David. And second?
Come on,
Lauren, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 7-0. Happy holidays, everybody. We are adjourned.